Hey, it's Mark Pattison. I'm back with another great episode of Finding Your Summit. And at the time when I originally recorded this podcast, I was living in Hermosa Beach, and I was talking to Mike Hattrup. And we were doing this via Skype, and there's some parts that got erased. I'm not sure how that happened, but between when we originally recorded it from Hermosa Beach all the way to Sun Valley, somewhere in there, I ended up buying a house here. So, Mike, how you doing? You were my official new neighbor. You were actually literally 75 yards away from my front door.
Yeah, you made a good move. I think you'll find that. I think you know that.
Well, I think I do know that. I mean, I'm coming here kind of on the tail end of ski season, and I've been coming over here for years. You've been living here for what, 22 years?
24.
24 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. And every single time I left Sun Valley back in destination to Seattle or LA, I always had this sinking feeling. And there's no other place I've ever been in the world where I actually have that, I got to leave. Sun Valley has just got that draw.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. Through my time in the ski industry, I've been to every major ski resort in the U.S. And when I finally realized I want to live in the mountains, it was an easy decision for me. I came straight here.
That's awesome. So let's get caught up. You and I met back in college, probably as freshmen, and you were in one fraternity. I was in another. I was playing football. And something that was very distinctive that everybody knew about you was that you were this exceptional skier. And so I think the first thing I want to ask you is, where did that come from? I mean, a lot of the guys, so we grew up in the same town, Seattle, and I played football and basketball and baseball at the same time. I don't think I started skiing until about 9th grade. You probably started skiing earlier, but where was that? How did you get sticky in terms of your attraction to skiing?
My mom skied a little bit. She wasn't a big skier. She didn't grow up skiing, but she learned, I don't know, maybe sometime in college. And so she introduced us to skiing from the first time I remember my first day still. And I was hooked from the very beginning. And like you, I played everything growing up, from soccer to volleyball and hockey and baseball. But skiing was the one thing that really lit a fire for me.
Yeah, so here in Sun Valley, you have a son that's very talented, Axel, right?
Son and daughter. Daughter's actually very good too.
So you're a product of your environment, right? And so we are literally across the street from the mountain.
They have no idea how spoiled they are.
It's incredible.
I told them that we used to drive an hour and a half to 2 hours to get to Crystal Mountain. And they're like, "You drove 2 hours to go skiing?" And it's like, yeah, and I only had one pair of skis, too. I mean, they're both on the race team. They've got 4 or 5 pairs of skis and walk to the lifts and ski 5 to 6 days a week.
But to your point, they're on a ski team. It's part of the curriculum at school. With you and back in those days, was there a ski team or a club team or anything in high school or growing up? How did that work?
No, we ended up buying a cabin with some friends up at Crystal Mountain. So we shared a cabin with some really good friends of ours. And so that was where we spent all of our weekends and all of our Christmas breaks and all spring breaks. Was it Christmas? And I wasn't, there's a race team up there, but you had to live up there. There was no chance for me to do that, nor was I interested in racing. I was interested in skiing moguls at the time. And I learned to ski in the 70s when freestyle was at a peak. So that's what caught my eye, and that's what attracted me.
So in college now, around the time that you and I got to know each other, were you starting to get involved in more competitive races, bump races going down the mountain?
Yeah, I started, I guess, as a freshman, just before, maybe as a senior in high school. I did my first competitions and did well, and so that's what. My team was taking winter quarters off from college, stretching a 4-year education into 7.
So what did you call? You guys called yourself the Dirty Rats or something? I heard this term the other day.
The Goon Squad.
The Goon Squad. Okay.
The Dirty Rats.
Yeah, I knew
maybe that was more appropriate.
Maybe it was the Boomtown Rats, So I'm not sure. Yeah, so I had heard from Dennis McNamara, was one of those guys that, they referred to you guys as this group, and there was about, 6 of you?
Yeah, 6 to 8, something like that.
Yeah, and so were you anchored in Sun Valley, or were you going to Tahoe, or where were you skiing?
We were all over. I mean, Goon Squad was a bunch of Seattle freestyle skiers, and everybody was all over the place. But there was a core of them. We came here first to Sun Valley. So I went to Seattle Prep in Seattle U. There was a program called Mateo Ricci College where you go 3 years to prep and then 3 years to Seattle U, and you got a BA in humanities in 6 years instead of 8. So your senior year of high school, you spent at Seattle University. So by the time I actually graduated from Seattle University, I had a full year of college credits. So that's when I went, I can take a winter off and still be ahead of all my peers.
Yeah.
Well, 7 years later.
So where did the trajectory of knowing or putting your eye on the ball, like for me, I went from high school, I played at Roosevelt High School, and I was very fortunate to get a scholarship at the University of Washington, but I still didn't really have it in my mind about what that meant and where I was going with that. And it took a couple of years before I really clued in. And then the kind of the end game was, because a number of my teammates were actually going on into the NFL, that was like something that I started to turn my focus on in terms of like, this is what I want to do, but this is what I need to do to get to that point.
Right.
So for you, how did that all mix together?
Well, so for me, the goal was to try and get on the U.S. freestyle team. And the Northwest had a small competition circuit. And so we went to, me and Goon Squad, a handful of those guys. First, we went down to Squaw Valley where they had a much bigger competition field. That was after moving here to Sun Valley. So Sun Valley, Squaw Valley. Then we moved to Colorado where there was 100 competitors at every race. So all over the West, I competed. And that was, you got to compete against different fields and different competitors and also experience all those different ski areas and cultures, what they were like, because they're all different. But and Colorado was where the U.S. team coach was, and that's why we ended up there for several years.
So is the arc then to make the U.S. ski team, and then once you kind of prove yourself there, that is the platform that you then get chosen to go on to the Olympic team?
Yeah, so when I was competing, freestyle was not an Olympic sport. In 88, it was a demonstration sport. So that was the year I was shooting for, is to be on the Olympic team. And for me, I just made the U.S. team. So really, to have a shot at the Olympics was a pie in the sky. I was a super, super long shot.
So outside of just you then, just in terms of just the mechanics of it, so the pie in the sky was that it would have had to become a demonstration sport. I'm not sure what they call that, but we were saying that they didn't have the Olympics at that point, right?
Right. It wasn't an official event. I don't know if they do it every year, but every now and then there's different events that say we want to be an Olympic event.
Right.
And they usually get a demonstration. Or if you're lucky, you get a demonstration, you get a chance to go. So you compete at the Olympics, and whether that happens, whether they adopt that a sport depends on, I guess, a number of different things. I don't know exactly what those are. But anyways, freestyle made it, and it continues to, moguls is still in the Olympics.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's incredible, actually. So now you go to Colorado, you're competing against a pretty good field of skiers that can do this, along with the Goon Squad, right? And now you make the team.
Yeah.
Incredible. And how many guys do they take on the team?
I think on the mogul team, there may have been maybe 6 guys.
Yeah. So it's a pretty elite group.
Yeah, it's a small group for sure.
That's awesome.
But you got to put it in context. It's a small field of people competing. It's not like high school football where there's thousands and thousands and thousands of kids playing high school football. There's not that many people competing in moguls around the U.S.
Yeah,
it's a pretty small circle.
Well, it is a small circle, but somebody's got to be there, and they've got to pick somebody, and that's, even though that might be a small group, it's still a niche that has a lot of people trying to do what you did, and that you either make it or you don't make it.
Yeah.
And you made it.
I did.
So how did that first year go?
The first year went really short.
Yeah.
I was in Steamboat training for the first event, and I crashed and tore my ACL. So that was pretty much it. And at the time we all thought, well, the ACL's the bad one. Meniscus isn't so bad. And mine was completely severed. So I had 2 choices, either get it fixed right away or get a brace and go compete, because people do function without ACLs. So I got a brace and went to Lake Placid for the first World Cup to ski in that. And it was rock hard, icy moguls, and it was brutal. Nothing you'd ever ski for fun. And I crashed there and tore meniscus. And that was really, in retrospect, that was the worst one, because that one will haunt you. You can get a new ACL, but meniscus doesn't recover. And 2 years ago now, I had my knee replaced because of that.
Oh, man. Well, and especially, too, when you're going down bumps. I mean, even today, it's like your knees are your shock absorbers.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing, I mean, maybe if you're talking about your shoulder or your elbow or your hand joint or something, your fingers, it's a different animal. But I mean, those are the legs, the knees, or everything in that sport coming down that mountain.
For sure. Yeah. And that's one of the things the doc said with replace knee. No more moguls, no more icy moguls. It's like, I'm north of 50. That's an easy sacrifice. I've been trying to avoid them for the last 20 years anyways.
No, I can completely appreciate that. So to me, it's the name of this podcast is called Finding Your Summit. And at this point, talk about adversity that you got to go through in order to, where do you go from now? Because you're on a certain trajectory on your life. You think you just made this team, you're ecstatic. And now all of a sudden the moment hits.
Yeah.
What do?
You take a step back, and the way I looked at it is, okay, yeah, I'll get my knee fixed and I got a shot at this next year. So I can go back and do it next year. It's a 22-year-old. It's devastating to have your dreams dashed like that because that was first big life disappointment as a 22-year-old. That's a hard thing to swallow. Yeah. And of course, in retrospect, everybody goes through hardships like this, and it's just what you do with it on the other end. And my attitude was, okay, I get the knee fixed and I still got a spot. I'll go back and ski next year. I didn't. I had a spot to go, but I ended up going to Chamonix to shoot film instead.
Not a bad spot.
No.
Certainly, from a career standpoint, it ended up being a much better move because the film we shot was Blizzard of Aahhh, which, despite being 20-plus years old now, is
a classic.
It really was for a number of different reasons. But, yeah, it ended up being a good thing. It was a ton of fun. And that really led me down the path that I'm on now from a guiding standpoint because the Chamonix, the big mountains there, we skied in some wild places. And I knew I had no business being there without a guide. But I really was drawn to that terrain. So it was either hire a guide every time I wanted to go out. I wasn't interested, nor did I have the money to do that. Or go learn those skills yourself. And that's the path that I ended up going down.
That's great. So help me understand. So Greg Stump is a film producer, right?
Yep.
And about that same time, Warren Miller was doing a bunch of movies, right?
For sure. Well, Warren had been doing movies for, 30 or 40 years at that point. And Stump was new, and you'll get a kick out of this because Warren Miller would go all over the U.S. and all over the world and shoot great footage and come back and show it. And he'd have a little segment on each area he went to. But you didn't know any of the people in the film. And it was just, you saw them one year and then it was gone. But Stump's vision for this was to recreate in skiing the NFL. He would interview the players and talk to them about a Super Bowl game and the plays and what they were thinking and what they were feeling. And that's what he was trying to recreate with the ski film. So because of that, you got to know the people in the movie. He only had a few skiers instead of 30 different skiers. There was 3 or 5, and you got to know those people. I think the other reason that made that movie such a classic was that it came out right when VHS came out. So it was one of the first ski films that you could own. Before that, it came to your local theater in the fall and you watched it and then it went away. Whereas this one, people owned and they watched it over and over again. And you run into people who can recite a bunch of the lines from the movie that watched it every day, that wore out their tape.
Well, to me, because I've seen some of that stuff, right? And it was you, and it was Glenn Plague, the guy with the big fan mohawk, and who else was in there?
Scott Schmidt was the other one.
Scott Schmidt, yeah. So you guys were the 3 main characters, but you were really ahead of your time, right? From the standpoint of this reality TV has really taken over. And so he would beam in. I remember watching, I'm not sure which movie it was, but seeing these clips of you guys hanging out in the chalet or wherever you were and just kind of drinking beers or whatever you're talking about the day or just goofing off. It was great. Great footage. But it just, going back to that reality TV, it kind of seemed like it was that before it became what it is today.
That's an interesting take. I never thought about it that way, but it really was. I guess it was reality TV before it exploded.
It was reality TV on tape. Tape delay, 20 years, right? That's awesome. So how many movies did you make in all? I mean, that must have been a blast. You're hanging out with your best buddies. You guys are going all over the world, just being paid to go do what you love, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It wasn't anything that you can make a living at, but actually people are now. But when we were doing it, if you got to be in a ski movie, that was it. You went and skied in the movie. But it was really cool because I got to travel all over the place and places that I wouldn't have gone to. And we got to do a lot of special things, helicopter skis and these adventures that we wouldn't have gone on by ourselves. So it really was a special time. As far as how many movies I did, I'm not sure how many it was. I don't know. Maybe it was a dozen, somewhere around there.
Yeah, just a dozen. No big deal.
Some were bigger than others.
Yeah, well, listen, I've got 0, so that's on my resume right now. The NFL, though, it's another one of those places where people aspire to go play, which I did, and you get to make a little bit more money probably than you did in those days and
quite a bit.
Shooting movies, but I didn't get to, you don't take your team and like, hey, we're going to Switzerland. I mean, they play maybe 1 or twice a year in Europe, London or someplace, but it wasn't where you're literally transforming yourself. And one of the places that I've got to in my life, and it's taken me a long time to figure this out, is really leading more of a life of purpose, right? Versus necessarily chasing the dollar. Now, in the NFL case, I was doing that for the love of the game. But in so many cases, you say, I can't do that. I'd love to do that, but I can't just because you're driven by responsibilities and you just can't go do that. So to have that in your back pocket and with those guys, what a special time and what a great memory.
No question. And like you and unlike you, I did it for the love of the game. But unlike you, it didn't come with a paycheck. You can go to all those places now on your own.
Yeah.
But I always looked at it as more a life of balance. I guess purpose is another way to say that. But I never chased the paycheck either. It was more about lifestyle and experiences. And certainly I have a wealth of experiences from all over the planet. So from that standpoint, it was
awesome. So give me a story, quick story. There must be something like they dropped you out of a helicopter at 30,000 feet, you landed and off you went. I mean, I'm making that up, but was there a scene or two where you look back on it today and you're going, maybe that wasn't the best idea?
Yeah, well, there's a few of those actually. And one of them was that film, Blizzard of Aahhh in Chamonix, and we had been there for a week, and it had puked snow for a week, so we never got up high. And finally, the first sunny day, we got to go up high on the Aiguille de Midi, and it's this tram. At the time, it was an ancient tram. It was built in 1953, and this old rickety Volkswagen box kind of that you'd ride up in, and you're hundreds of feet above the ground in places. And it's caught big rock, and the tram goes right into the walk across this bridge that spans 2 needles, and you go in through a tunnel of that, and then you come out on this ridge line, and the ridge line drops away maybe 1,000 feet to one side and probably 5,000. Well, eventually it goes all the way down to Chamonix on the other. And so we're skiing down. We're going to ski down. Actually, we weren't planning on skiing down, but we're walking down this thing, and Scott is looking over the edge at this steep couloir, and Greg says, you want to ski that, Scott? And he goes, yeah, I'll ski it. And we're looking at this thing. And remember, I'm a ski area boy. I grew up skiing Crystal Mountain, and I've never had a harness on. I've never had an avalanche beacon on. I've never had an ice axe in my hand. And I'm looking at this thing, and it deep and then drops out of sight. And you go, holy shit. Pans the can across to me and says, Mike, do you want to ski it? And inside I'm saying, off, I'll feel. But so this meek little, comes out, and you can practically see the glare in my eyes through the mirrored lenses I'm wearing. So that was the first time I'd skied something like that. And I got partway down this thing, and my ski hit a rock, and then my ski went shooting down to the bottom of this couloir. And we've got a guide who's from New Zealand, and his heavy New Zealand accent, he says, Mike, your skis just stopped on the other side of a bergschrund, so come in from the side. And I'm cruising down there, and I don't know what a bergschrund is, and I don't know what he's talking about. And I get down there, and I listen to him, and I come in from the side. Well, my ski was just on the downside of a big crevasse.
Oh.
And I'm going, oh my God, that's what he's talking about.
And you're not roped in. You go in this thing and you're going to some other country.
And I'm as green as can be. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into. So that was kind of my introduction to the big mountains and reality.
That's awesome. Well, fortunately, nobody got hurt in that story, right? And hopefully some of the other movies you did, nobody got hurt, right?
Correct. There was no major.
No major. So now you're progressing, you're moving on in your career. I read that you became the first American, or one of the first Americans, to be the certified AMGA ski mountaineering guide. So what does that stand for?
That's American Mountain Guide Association.
So how do you get that certification?
Well, so that goes back to, that's that whole situation that I just described was, I like being in this area. It's really cool. It's unbelievable. It's raw. It's fierce. I have no business being out here. So I started taking crevasse rescue courses and avalanche courses. And at the time there was an International Ski Guide Association or International Mountain Guide Association, but there wasn't anything in the States for skiing. And I went to Mount Rainier and started guiding on Rainier just for the education. And shortly after I started guiding there, the AMGA, the Guide Association here in America, developed a ski course. So that's why I was one of the first ones, just because I was one of the first ones in the program. And there was a handful of us, single digits, to be certified, to go through the program and be certified.
So then did that lead you to where you're at today, where you're taking people over to France and Switzerland and other places to guide them on ski touring?
Yeah. So there's different levels of certification. In the States, there's 3 different disciplines. There's skiing, rock, and alpine. And alpine is climbing something like Rainier or the Matterhorn. So to be an international guide, you need all 3 credentials. And that's what you need to guide in Europe. Most of Europe. It's different for every country. But so I'm just ski certified. So I can guide ski mountaineering stuff in the States, but most of Europe I can't anymore because they've changed the rules there. Mm-hmm. But to get those certifications, you've got to have years of experience of guiding trips, of climbing different peaks and traverses. And then there's 2 courses. There's 2 week to 10-day courses for the AMGA that you have to go through. And then there's another 8-day exam. And my exam was actually over in Switzerland.
Mm-hmm. Great spot to have an exam, right?
Yeah, great spot, but also an intimidating spot because it's big and it's raw, and it's really different when you think about most of the backcountry skiing in the U.S. You're going out on a ski tour to ski this beautiful powder slope. There's avalanche hazard, which is dangerous, but it doesn't look dangerous. It looks inviting. It's a foot of new snow that's sparkling in the sun, and it's perfect pitch, and it looks all but inviting. But over in Europe, you've got crevasses and big glaciers and seracs and icefall and rockfall and big rock spires. It can be really intimidating over there.
So at what point in this career, this long ski career that you've had, does reality kick in? And you're like, okay, movies are great. They don't pay anything. I can't ski anymore for the U.S. ski team. So now I have to go to work. And I think you went to work for K2, right?
Yeah, I went to work for K2 right out of college. So the year I got back from Chamonix shooting the Blizzard of Aahhh, I got hired by K2. And I've worked at K2 until, a year and a half ago. Yeah. And I just switched to Fisher Ski, so I'm working for them now. But my guiding and time in the backcountry really helped my career at K2 as well, because I started a backcountry division for them and ran that for years, and now I'm working for Fisher in a similar capacity.
What does that mean exactly? So you get hired, or they basically, you're out promoting their different products, their skis, and you're now also guiding, they're allowing you to go over to Europe and do this guiding thing in this backcountry, and hopefully they're going to use the K2 skis. How did that work?
Yeah. So guiding, I'm not guiding that much. I'm not a full-time mountain guide. You can't afford, I don't have the time to do that and work for a ski company. So
why not? Keep going.
Yeah, if either one of those was NFL wages, then I could do either.
I understand.
So the work I do for Fisher now is promoting skis. It's working with the Austrian team to develop skis and boots and products, as well as market, promote, and sell it.
That's great. But the best thing about that, too, is that you can remain in Sun Valley, in Ketchimadamo, right?
For sure, which is unique, and I've been lucky to be parked here for so long because there's no ski company here. It's not an easy place to work, but the fact that I'm here has also made me valuable because on the pulse. I'm not sitting in an office in the city without direct connection to that community.
Yeah, I totally get that. It's really an opportunity, right? For the company to have you there right at your fingers right on the pulse.
Exactly. And as a guide, I'm talking to other guides and I'm guiding clients. So I'm in touch with a lot of different people, and the guiding in the States is very different than the guiding in Europe. And you get to understand the different markets as well.
That's awesome. So didn't you do Denali?
Yeah, I did when I was guiding for Rainier Mountaineering.
And did you make it to the top?
I did.
Awesome.
And I vowed I'd never go back there again without skis because it's a long walk down.
Listen, I've done it and I have to do it again. It sucks, but it is what it is. And I vowed that I'd never go back unless I was on skis and I'd skin up and then ski down. And I don't have you to guide me, unfortunately. So I have to pull my sled and put on my crampons and snowshoes and be on my way next May. So it just is what it is, but fingers crossed, as you know, that it's a tricky mountain and a lot of things are going on and the weather can be insane. I don't know how it was for you when you're up there.
We were there late in the year, we summited in July, early July, which is late in the climbing year. You're going in May, that's early. We didn't have much tough weather except for summit day, and we were the only ones on the summit. And it was, you got your big, thick, 8,000 meter down parka, and we were climbing in those. Usually those are for the rest breaks.
Sit down and put it on.
Yeah, but it was blowing so hard, it was miserable up there. And we got to the top. Okay, high fives, and let's get out of here. Yeah.
But you made it, man. You got that one on your belt. That's awesome.
Yeah. If you're going on skis, we'll have to talk. Maybe I'll try and join you.
Well, I'd love to do that. You can still talk me out of it. I'm happy to do that. So what else are you doing in your life? You're skiing, you're guiding, you're living in Sun Valley, you're now working for Fisher. You've got 2 small kids. And by the way, I want to plug your son. He's 14 now, 13?
He's 14. Yeah.
The guy is an insanely fantastic skier. I mean, I guess that's the product of raising a child at the base of the mountain, right?
For sure. And actually, my daughter is a really good skier as well. Both of them actually beat me in a race course last year. And she's only 12. But yeah, no, they're both great skiers. And yeah, it's growing up at the base of the mountain, but they've also been on the Sun Valley ski team, on the race team from an early age. So they've had great coaching. I hate to say it, but they wouldn't be as good as skiers if it was just me teaching them.
No, I appreciate that.
Unbelievable coaching staff there, and they're producing unreal skiers. So,
well, I think the whole game has changed in terms of the way people train today versus when you and I were growing up. Well, everybody, right? There weren't select teams and club teams, and everything seems to be much more organized at a much younger age, right? From weight training to all these other things that help lead towards being better at that particular craft that you're trying to do. It's no different in skiing here in California. These kids are 6 a.m. They're down on the beach surfing. They're a surf school. Right. And, you know, if your kids lived out here on the beach, they'd probably be fantastic surfers. Right. But it's a product of their environment, which has created what they are today. And I'm no doubt that I'm not sure where that's going to take them both, but I've just seen video. Well, as a mountain biker, too, with your son, he's bound to go do something athletic like that.
He certainly has a passion for both, and hopefully he can stay injury free, and we'll see how long the passion lasts.
So kind of finally coming down the home stretch here, Mike, we spent a lot of time talking about the guiding that you do in the States and in Europe. Is that open to the public?
What do you mean? Can anybody sign up for the...
Well, do you have a place where people sign up and, where you guide people around?
Yeah, I guide for 2 different groups. One is Pro Ski Service, and he's out of North Bend in Seattle, or just outside of Seattle. And he's a Swiss guide who's got a ski shop there called Pro Ski Service. His guiding is pro guiding, and he guides trips all over Europe as well as Japan and South America. And then there's another group, Sun Valley Trekking, that I guide for here locally. Yeah, anybody can sign up for those trips, and you need to be a pretty good skier, and depending on the trip and the intensity. For most of the European trips, they're week-long hut trips, and you're climbing 4,000 to 5,000 or 6,000 feet a day, and so they're long days, but it's super rewarding and, as you know, spectacular terrain.
I love that. Now that we are about equally the same age, pretty much all my athletic skills have gone out the window. The only thing I can still kind of do is ski, right? I mean, I'm not at your level, but I can still go up there and feel like I was when I was 22 years old for a bit. It brings me some joy. So I definitely want to be one of those guys on one of your treks on this next one. We'll talk about that when we get off the air here. But listen, it's been a remarkable story. You've always been a great friend to me, and I appreciate that so much. And like I said, I opened this with you're kind of the envy of many that you get to live in this ski town and work in the ski industry, and you've been able to do that for a long time. And you've just always had a great way about you and the way you see the world. So I really appreciate that.
Well, thanks very much. It's been fun chatting to you, and I look forward to getting with you.
Awesome. All right, buddy. Take care.
Thanks. See ya.
Hey, this is Mark, and thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast this week. We had another great guest, and it is so awesome to continually have these different people on, talk about their different adversity, how they've overcome that, and what they've done to affect change in their life to become very successful. So really appreciate you guys tuning in. So as always, we love the rating and reviews that you guys do on iTunes. If you haven't done that, please go do that. It really helps us in terms of increasing our visibility within Apple iTunes. Anyways, it's just fun to share the love and what these different stories, these different people are all about. So make sure you tune in next week. We appreciate it. And that's it. Bye.